Okay. We are so excited to be here today with Dennis Scott, my good friend and genius composer, producer, all these wonderful things. And I have gathered a few facts about Dennis and I'm going to share them. I do need my notes because there are so many artists, I couldn't keep all these in mind.
I thought you were going to memorize this.
I'll do my best.
Okay.
I'll try not to.
Okay.
Just run the teleprompter, okay? Dennis is a two-time Grammy and Emmy award-winning composer and producer. His songs have been recorded by, just to name a few, hang with me here, Alison Krauss, Ricky Skaggs, Ray Charles, Faith Hill, Sugar Land, Crystal Gale, Hank Williams Jr., Amy Grant, Donna Summer, Kathy Lee Gifford, Loretta Lynn, Glenn Campbell, Maureen McGovern, CeCe Winans, Trisha Yearwood, Tanya Tucker, Buck Owens, Roy Clark, Ben Vereen, the Charlie Daniels Band, Roberta Flack, Jim Henson, and the Muppets, and a pair we all know and loved, Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop.
That's right.
That's perfect. His music has been featured on numerous television shows, including Who's the Boss, Sesame Street, CBS This Morning, Fame, The Richard Simmons Show, The Guiding Light, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on ABC. The list goes on and on and on. Dennis began his entertainment career at the age of 7 on the Broadway stage. At Lincoln Center, he performed the part of Winthrop in The Music Man, opposite Eddie Albert.
76
Bones hit the big parade. Everybody. And then later opposite Burt Parks. He also appeared in a plethora of iconic 60s television shows.
Hey, let's keep this clean, okay?
Okay.
No plethoras.
Sorry.
Yeah.
One of Dennis's latest endeavors has been recording the songs of Mr. Fred Rogers. The first recording, Songs from the Neighborhood, the music of Mr. Rogers, garnered a Grammy Award as Best Musical Recording for Children. Today, we just want to hear all about Dennis Scott, the man, the music, the majesty, the legend.
The legend, in his own mind.
I love it. So I have talked enough. Let's go on with the show. Dennis, can we kind of start at the very beginning? A very good place to start. Tell us a little bit about this 7-year-old experience. Oh, excuse me. Dennis lives right here in Nashville. And he's originally from Long Island.
Former New Yorker.
Mm-hmm. But he's here with us and lives and works among us. So, ta-da.
I spend a lot of time in Bellevue.
That's right, yeah. Exactly.
I'm so glad there's a Dairy Queen there now.
Absolutely.
And Chick-fil-A.
Chill and Grill. Chill and Grill.
Yeah.
So, tell us about this 7-year-old experience.
Well, as you have said, I started as a small child.
Yes.
And I told my parents I wanted to be on television, and they physically picked me up and put me on top of the TV set. I said, no, I want to be inside the TV. So they started giving me lessons, and I started auditioning for things, and I got my first part in a Broadway show, 7 years old, on Broadway, not in a featured role, but in the chorus of a show called Sail Away, which was written by the famous Noel Coward, and starred a woman by the name of Elaine Stritch. If you're a theater person, you know Elaine was a big deal. She went on to be in Company and all these other shows. So I was just one of the kids, but I was precocious at that age. So I felt a need to get involved in the show more than just my little small part. So I memorized the entire show. And during breaks at rehearsals, when all the dancers would be taking a break, I'd go onto the floor and I'd start reciting the whole show for everybody and acting out all the parts. And eventually they came in, they started dancing around me. So that was my, and I also had the interesting experience of being in out-of-town tryouts, and this is 1961-ish, and Jacqueline Kennedy came to see the show in Boston, and everybody was just so excited. Jackie's coming. And so after the show, everybody lined up so that Jackie could one by one greet the cast. But I had an idea. I told some of the other kids in the chorus, okay, I'm going to pretend to faint, and you guys catch me. And that's what we did. And guess what? It made it into the paper. It said, Dennis clowns a faint. So there we go.
I love it. Now, is that the show that had the dog story?
Yes.
Can you, this is my, and speaking of dog stories, can we introduce a member of Dennis's family? But this is very important.
Okay, this is what we'd like to call the world's cutest and most expensive dog. This is Patches.
Patches. I think having a picture of Patches here, for you to all see, him introduces this next segment, this next story perfectly.
Yes,
and
because
Dennis's history with dogs.
so when I got into the show Sail Away, we had actually given away our other dog, a Cocker Spaniel, who I loved, named Cindy, because I was allergic. But my parents got us another dog. It was a Schnauzer, and because I was in the show called Sail Away, we named the dog Sail Away.
Of course.
And in the show, Elaine Stritch comes on stage carrying this dog under her arm, and the dog shows up in various scenes. Well, one day that dog, I think it was like a bulldog or something, bit her. And Elaine said, "That dog is out of here." And the stage manager said, "What are we going to do? We need a dog." And so little Dennis waves his hand, "I have a dog." And so my dog Sail Away got into the show, got paid more than I did, collected unemployment insurance, and now, so here we are with Patches, who does not earn his keep at all.
But that's a great story. I love that. Thank you. So Sail Away was your first show. What was your second?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Maybe the better story is this show I didn't get into.
Oh.
Okay, so about the same time that Sail Away was playing, there were a lot of other shows right around the corner, shows that everyone would have heard of, like How to Succeed in Business, Camelot. I think My Fair Lady was finishing its run on Broadway, and another show with Phil Silvers called Do Re Mi. Anyway, the show that I'm referring to now is Oliver. That was on Broadway too, and I had auditioned for Oliver, but I couldn't be in it because I was in Sail Away. So we got a letter from them saying, "If you're still interested, we'd like you to be in the chorus." Well, Sail Away closed, and my mother said, "No, you just finished a year and a half in a chorus in a show on Broadway with me schlepping you into New York City every night. We're going to take a break from that." Now here's the fun part. So those of you who are Beatles fans know that the show Oliver was one of the guests on the Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th, 1964, the day that the Beatles were introduced to America and were on the Ed Sullivan Show. So had my mother let me be in the show Oliver, I would have been on the same stage as the Beatles on that day, February 9th, 1964. And that's my story. Yeah. Who asked you?
Unbelievable. Well, we're going to go back to the younger days, but just moving forward, you're kind of trying to heal that Beatles wound in your heart.
Yes.
By starting and continuing to perform with
a Beatles tribute band by the name of the Wanna Beatles.
Woohoo!
Don't you love that name?
I do love that name, and I do love the Wanna Beatles.
Well, I love doing it because it's music I grew up with, and who doesn't love Beatles music? I see a couple of you out there shaking your head. No. Come see us. Actually, we're playing tonight in Lewisburg, and the band before us is a Rolling Stones band. So I'm sure there'll be a couple people left to see us after that.
Oh, well, everybody has to decide which they are. I'm Beatles,
Me too. So anyway, I tell people it's the best gig I've ever had. What could be better than playing those songs? And people are so joyful when they hear Beatles music.
Oh my goodness.
Not you. You're very subdued.
About everything. Well, Dennis, the Wanna Beatles played for my 50th high school reunion, and I mean, talk about that. We were weeping, just tears of joy. It was just fantastic.
It was blast.
So if you ever get a chance to hear the Wanna Beatles, run, don't walk. Your heart will be dancing. Your feet will be dancing. It's just an amazing experience. Well, Okay, rewind back to childhood again. I know. Can you tell us a little bit about the Music Man, and then I want to transition to some of your television work.
Well, I like to tell this story because I auditioned to be in the Music Man. There was going to be a production in Dallas, Texas, and it was going to star Eddie Albert from Green Acres fame and movies and Hollywood. But they wanted somebody who had already done the show, so they didn't have to break in a new person. So my mother, God bless her, she took my resume, and this in the days there was no Google, there's no way to check on these things. She added that I had performed The Music Man in Massachusetts somewhere, which I had not. And I said, but Mommy, I never did that. She said, Dennis, this is what we call a little white lie, and which I've used since then many times. But I got the part, so I got into the show, and I'm sure at rehearsals the director is looking, shouldn't this kid know where he's supposed to go now? I think I overheard them saying that, but
Oh my goodness.
so that's my story. And then the story when I was in the show, if you've seen The Music Man, there's a scene where Winthrop, the character I played, all he has to do is walk on stage and deliver a letter to Marion the librarian, and then he walks off. And it's crucial to the plot of the show.
Yes.
It's dress rehearsal, and Dennis is in his dressing room reading a comic book. And I kind of lost track of time. And while I'm reading my comic book, everybody is on stage ad-libbing, saying, so where do you think Winthrop is right now? Well, I don't know, Mama. I'm sure he's around somewhere. And everyone's looking for me. So finally the stage manager burst into the dressing room saying, go on stage. I said, why? I'm reading my comic book. He said, no, just walk on stage. And so I walk on stage. The entire audience stands up and applauds. And I was oblivious. I just didn't put it all together. And she said, Winthrop, do you have a note for us? Oh, yeah, here it is. And then I left the stage, and they stood up again and applauded.
Unbelievable. I love it.
And later, the man who's the producer of those shows, I met him. I went to the restroom, and he was in there. And he says, so Dennis, do you think you'll be coming out a little earlier tomorrow when we actually do the show for a paying audience? I said, yes, sir.
No comic books for you for 1 year.
No. It's a tough way to learn the business.
Unbelievable. So how old were you at this point?
I was probably about 8.5 or 9.
Well, that's pretty amazing to be doing that. Now, I do want to go to TV, but before I do that, I would love for you to relate the story of when you were in, was it the Hamptons?
Oh, the Catskill Mountains.
The Catskills, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have to go a little younger.
A little
again.
younger. Oh, you were 5?
I was probably 5 or 6, yeah.
Okay.
So this is before I started auditioning for things.
Rewind.
Yeah, here we go. So here, let's get nostalgic. I was taking singing lessons, dancing, and acting lessons at a little studio near where we lived. And this year, my parents took us to the Catskill Mountains. For those of you who may not know, it was a retreat in upstate New York, and people would go there, and they had all these luxurious hotels and huge lakes, and the most prominent hotel was the Concord Hotel. It was a city within a city. They had an underground where if you wanted to have your hair done or stop and have coffee, they had everything. So they also had a nightclub. So when my parents were checking into the hotel, not by computer, everything's done by hand, I kind of wandered off, as I guess I'm prone to do, as I'm beginning to realize that. And I wandered down the hall, and there was the entrance to the nightclub. And there was a woman there sitting at a table, writing down things. And I went up to her and said, what's in there? And she said, that's our nightclub, kid. All the women up in the castle talk like that. And I said, oh, what's going to happen there? And she said, it's going to have singing and dancing. And I said, oh, can I sing? And she said, sure, kid. Yeah, you can sing. That was good enough for me. So that night, we the whole family goes to the nightclub. We're sitting at a table, and there's a stage. People are up there dancing to a band, and all of a sudden, Dennis disappears. Couldn't find me. I had gone up to our hotel room to get my sheet music from my singing lessons, because I thought I better have that if I'm going to perform tonight. and then I walked onto the stage and walked right up to the band leader. And I said, "Here's my music." And he said, "What do you want?" I said, I'm going to sing." And he said, "Who told you you can sing?" And I said, "The lady in charge." So everybody had stopped dancing by now, because he's trying to conduct and he can't do two things at once. So he looked at me and said, "Okay." And he turned to the people in the audience and said, "Folks, I don't know what we have here, but this kid is going to sing." And I did my big number, which was, it was either When the Red Robin Goes Bobbin' Along, or it was Put on a Happy Face, maybe High Hopes, I don't remember now. But my parents looked up and there I was. My first unpaid gig.
First of many.
Okay. And
Just kidding.
The sweet part is my grandparents were there too. And my grandfather went to one of these places where you can print up a phony headline. And he had one printed up that said, "Dennis wows them at the Concord."
Love
And
it.
somewhere I have that. I don't know where it's gone. But
I love that story. Oh my goodness, I love that story. Thank you.
what was I thinking? It's like,
I love that can do. I love it. If we could keep that spirit our whole lives, it would be great. We'd all be singing at the Catskills.
that's right. Which now is no more,
Oh,
unfortunately.
Well, Dennis, through high school, you played in band. Through elementary, you stayed. Oh, no, rewind. A little bit of the television story of the shows.
Oh.
I know you did a lot of them.
Well, yeah, actually,
Route 60. Was it Route 60?
I don't know how many people remember Route 66.
Can you
Martin Milner and who was the other guy? I can't think of it now. The good-looking one.
Yes. Very
Anyway,
cute.
so
Can you give us your line from Route 66?
oh my, well, my wife taunts me about this, but they wrote a script, and back in the 60s, maybe the scripts were not as subtle as they are now, because I played this boy who was helping out two friends who were trying to find a home for their baby brother, because the home was an unhappy home, and they said, "We don't want this kid to live with us." So they go yelling to me on the second story of a house. I open up the window and said, "Golly gee, Tommy, is that you? And Pansy, is that you too? Well, golly gee, what do you want?" And it's like, nobody talks like that. But those were my lines, and I said them with a gusto. So
Did you take the baby?
I did. I babysat for the kids. I said, "What do you want? Food?" He said, "No, we want you to take care of our baby brother." We'll have to think about that. so anyway.
I love it. So I know you did. Did you do the Mitch Millers?
I was. I think that was the first thing I did. I remember because that was the same time the first astronaut went into space. Carpenter.
Oh, really?
John Carpenter. We were in the green room waiting to go on for our little spot, and we were watching all that.
Love it.
And the Mitch Miller Show was not a featured role like it was on Route 66. Golly gee! But it was. I was singing along with the kids, and I didn't realize what a big deal Mitch Miller was. He was actually a renowned producer for Columbia Records, and he produced Perry Como and all these different people. So
Interesting.
years later, I was playing gigs with bands in New York, and he was a guest. And I recognized him and said, "Hi, Mr. Miller, you remember me, but I was on your show when I was like almost 7 years old." He said, "What's your name?" I said, "Well, at that time it was Dennis Richard." I said, "Yeah, I remember you. I used to sign your checks." So
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you. I could stay here all
my
day.
life is flashing before my eyes.
And all of ours.
I'm going to have to start drinking.
We love it. We love it. Well, Dennis, can you tell us how you moved a little bit from that performer persona into the writer producer? role.
So soon? You don't want to hear about Sammy Davis Jr.?
That's actually that's exactly what
Okay,
I want.
I thought I could read your mind.
Exactly.
No, sorry. I'll make it quick.
You don't have to make it quick.
But that's, that was a highlight for me. I mean, even I at an early stage knew the importance of Sammy Davis Jr.
Yes.
And I got the role because they had a special called Sammy and His Wonderful World of Kids. And they were looking for kids who could do a lot of different things. So they didn't care that I could sing, but I did a Jack Benny impression at a very early age. Don't ask me why. I just loved watching that show, and I loved his character, Jack Benny, and the way he would talk, you see, and look. So anyway, so I auditioned. They said, what else can you do besides sing? And I did that. That got me the part.
Amazing.
And so I got to be around the aura of Sammy Davis Jr., watching him perform.
Oh my goodness.
And of course, he was a great impressionist.
Yes.
And he did a great Jerry Lewis impression. I learned how to do that by watching him.
Well, which brings me to, could you do a little?
Well, Sammy was good, but I could do what he did because he did it very good.
So,
Didn't you do that for Jerry Lewis?
oh, years later, I got to meet Jerry Lewis, and I had the nerve to do impression in front of him. And he looked at me and said, "Kid, one's enough." He did. He said that in a kind of gracious way.
Yes.
But just to finish the story about Sammy and the show, so I fancied myself an expert on how to do Jack Benny. So they gave me lines, and the director said, "Kid, say your lines quicker. It's only an hour show." And I said, "Yes, but Jack has lots of pauses, you see, when he does his lines."
Of
And
course.
he said, "Kid, say your lines quickly." And so I almost lost the part because I had artistic integrity.
Absolutely. Well, you were channeling him.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So anyway, no, I finally came around because they were telling my mother, "You better work with this kid."
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, before we move to the progression to producer, are there any other wonderful little tidbits from those days, stories?
Well, my dubious moment was being a kid recording with Patti Page. She was not in the studio.
Oh my goodness.
It was a Patti Page record, a Christmas album. And I was one of several kids singing backgrounds for Christmas songs. So we were doing Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And you know the part, little tin horns, Rudy Toot Toots, and Rummy Tum Tums. For some reason, the Rummy Tum Tums struck me funny. And every time we got to that line, I broke out laughing. And the producers on the other side of the glass saying, "What's wrong with this kid?" And said, "Okay, let's try it again." We got to Rudy Toot Toots and Rummy Tum Tums. And finally, I didn't know this, but my father came to pick me up. He was in the room with the producers, just sitting back, watching all this unfold. And the producer was saying, "If this kid doesn't shape up, he's out of here. Take him out." So I think I finally got
it right.
Got it right.
Well, it is kind of a funny line, Rummy Tum
Well,
Tums.
you know how sometimes things...
Things just hit you.
So, well, my father did not hit me, but later on, we got a strong talking to. And he said, "Here's how a professional works. Here's what an amateur does. Guess what you were tonight?" And I've never forgotten it. And
That's right. You've never cracked up on a Rummy Tum Tum
No,
since?
no. The Rudy Toot Toots kind of get me.
That gets you every time. Absolutely. Well, I love these stories. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about the transition, because when I read this list, I don't know anybody who's had songs cut by so many people. This is amazing. You first started working in Nashville when you had been working in Sesame Street, and then you came to Nashville, and that's probably when you connected with all these artists.
Yes. I don't think Well, I did have one thing that was recorded, not by anybody that famous, but when I first started getting into songwriting, I wrote a novelty song called Captain Kirk's Disco Trek, Days of Disco. And I took it around, I tried to pitch it, and it's really hard to pitch a novelty song. But somebody said, why don't you take it to a children's record label? And I did, and they didn't want it either. But they said, well, you have a kind of a style of writing we like. Why don't you try writing some parody songs for us? And I did. That was my first children's album. And I figured, okay, what do I do now? So I took the album to Sesame Street. They had a record label at the time. And they said, well, we don't like this either. But if you want to hang around here, come in and get on the phone and try to get us some artists to be on a new project called Sesame Street Goes Country. And that's what I did. I wasn't paid for it. Put on a tie and jacket, went to the ASCAP building where Sesame Street was housed, and I would say, hi, I'm from Sesame Street, unofficially. You know, is Willie Nelson there? Can I speak to Willie? Hello, Dolly? Would you like to be on our album? And we ended up, after calling, 80 people, we ended up with Glenn Campbell, Loretta Lynn, Tanya Tucker, and who am I forgetting? Crystal Gale. And which is kind of how you and I met. Do you want to tell that story? Because that's a good story.
Sure.
You got 20 seconds.
I was working at the studio, the sound shop, doing a recording project, and I was trying to break into writing children's songs myself. So I was on a break from recording. I sat down at the desk to use the telephone at the sound shop, and I looked. I wasn't snooping, but I looked down. It said Dennis Scott, Sesame Street, and then it was a 212 number.
Probably 6516. I was in Long Island.
Long Island, but I knew it was like New Yorkish.
Mm-hmm.
So when nobody was looking, I copied the number down. I thought, I'm just going to call this guy. So I did. I stole the number. Forgive me. That's not as bad as the white lie. But it's confessional time. Anyway, I called you up out of the blue and said, my name's Janet. I live in Nashville, and I got your number off the desk, and you work with Sesame Street, and can we be friends? And you said, well, I'm coming to town next week or something. I said, well, I'll pick you up at the airport and take you to dinner.
Yes, you did.
And I did. And that was in the 70s? In the 80s?
Probably 80.
80. Mm-hmm. 1980. Mm-hmm. And we've been besties ever since. Yep. And I even introduced him to his wife, pardon the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and we're still talking.
Exactly. So you recorded the Sesame Street album with all those great artists. And one of the songs called Songs.
Yes.
That Crystal Gale and Big Bird did a duet on, mm-hmm. which is fabulous, has been featured. Who all has done that song?
Yeah, I had a lot of good luck with that song because it's been on the TV show Fame, if you remember that from the 80s. And Aileen Quinn, who played Annie in the movie, yes. She recorded it. And it was used in the Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Yes.
Jimmy Osmond, well, he did it on Fame. I'm forgetting
John
somebody.
Stewart?
John Stewart and Elmo sang it as a duet. Nobody knew that John Stewart could sing, and he can't. So, but neither can Elmo. So it worked out perfectly.
It's a great song. It's a beautiful.
It's
song.
just a happy song.
Absolutely. So, can you tell me a little bit about how doing that Sesame Country album led to all the other artists, and most specifically the Mr. Rogers Project?
Oh, good. Well, the main thing about the Sesame Street Country album is that it won a Grammy Award. So it made me feel, okay, this is a good place for me to be. And I enjoyed doing it. And because I was the producer of the album, I had a little say-so in what songs got on the album. And it's just coincidental that a lot of my songs are on the album.
Yes.
So that's the way to do it. But it's led to other opportunities. And people who are in this business will appreciate, or people anywhere will appreciate the fact that sometimes things happen when you least expect them. Mm-hmm. A good example of the way my song got recorded by Ray Charles was that I was in New York. I was working on a project, and we had kids come in audition. They had to learn this song that I had co-written called Always a Friend. And long story short, this boy who auditioned, he remembered that song, and he moved out to Hollywood, and he got a spot on the show Who's the Boss? And he started to become boyfriend, girlfriend with Alyssa Milano. And he made his own little demo of that song that I had written from memory, and he gave it to her, and she loved it. And she handed it to the producers of the show and say, "Hey, look what Chad gave me." And they listened to it. "Oh, you know what? We have Ray Charles coming in to be a guest on the show. Maybe he could sing that song."
Oh, that's amazing.
And you know, because you're a writer, had I taken that song and tried to pitch it directly to Ray Charles, in a million years, it would never have gotten to him.
Agreed.
But in this case, he ended up singing on the show. And
That's amazing.
my quick favorite story about this, I was so excited. I went out to Hollywood to watch the filming, and I walked up to Ray Charles. I said, "Mr. Charles, I just want to say thank you so much for singing the song. Do you mind? Could I get your autograph?" And he said, "No, you don't read Braille, and I don't do autographs." And I like cowered away. But
Oh my goodness.
but to be fair, after he taped it, he kind of warmed up, and he actually said to me, "Oh, hey, come over here. I love that song. I'd like to sing that. I'd like to record that. Is that okay?" I said, "Yeah, it's okay."
Unbelievable. In fact, I think Ray Charles is here today.
He is.
Could he make a little appearance?
Could make it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, here we go. Oh yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Love it.
You
Love
want
it.
to see Rodney Dangerfield now?
Love it. Love it. Love it. So,
Oh, Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, yes.
So now we have to go a lot further. Most of the time I'm a hired gun. People say, "Dennis, we need a song about a whale. Write it." And so, but in this case, I was at home watching my little television set, and the Mr. Rogers show came on, and he was singing this beautiful little song called "It's You I Like," and it just struck me, where did this song come from? I didn't know that Mr. Rogers wrote 200 of the songs that appeared on his show. He loved music, and he was a gifted composer. So I wondered, has anybody else besides Mr. Rogers recorded these? And nobody had. And I just got it in my head. This is an idea too good to be true. So I pursued it. And I pursued it by first going to the Mr. Rogers people and saying, like the big shot that I am, "Hey, I've got a Grammy Award. I'd like to produce this album." And they said, no. This is Mr. Rogers' music. This is sacred music. What makes you think that we're going to let you do this? For a year, I pursued them. And I kept, finally, they said yes to make me go away, which is how I get most of my work. And then it took another year to find all these artists to be on the album, and we had people like Amy Grant and Crystal Gale and John Cicada and Maureen McGovern, all these great people singing their versions of Mr. Rogers songs and putting their stamp on it, and just illustrating how great these songs are. Because, I know you agree with this, a great song is one that can be recorded in a lot of different styles by different people. And that's what we did. And it went on to win a Grammy Award. And the better than the Grammy was, I got a voice message on my machine from Joanne Rogers, Fred's widow now. And she said, "Dennis, I want you to know, I just listened to the album, and my heart is in my mouth," because I thought, what happens if she hates it? And she said, "Dennis, I love it, and Fred would have loved it." And that's all I needed to hear.
That's amazing.
No.
Can you tell us how we can hear this, how we can order it, how we can stream it, how we can...
This album is on sale everywhere that music is sold. Digitally, smokestacks, wherever you get your music. If you go to Thank You, Mr. Rogers, Music and Memories, that's Thank You, Mr. Rogers, Music and Memories, you will find it. And that's the second album, Mr. Rogers album I did, which has Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees on it, and Vanessa Williams.
The Cowsills.
The Cowsills, and just great artists putting their stamp on it. If you're a Mr. Rogers fan, you'll love it. And if you're a fan of some of these great legendary artists, you'll love it too. But I hope you'll check it out, Bellevue.
And
I'm one of you. I live very close to Bellevue.
If you just love great music that touches the heart, you're going to love this record. It's beautiful. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Dennis. You're the best. Love you.
Love you.
Thank you. Dennis is an amazing artist, but even more importantly, he's a good man and a good friend. And he has a great wife, too.
And a nice dog.
And a wonderful dog. And a good son. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.